Michael Gulliford, the founder of the patent advisory firm Soryn IP Group, as well as its sister company Soryn Capital, which invests significant capital in a host of patent-centric strategies. At Soryn, Michael is a trusted partner and investor to a number of the world's most prestigious universities, law firms, and companies. He has recently closed almost $200 million in patent-centric deals and has been recognized by IAM as one of the leading IP strategists in the world for the last 5 years. Prior to founding Soryn, Michael was a partner in the patent litigation group at Kirkland & Ellis, the largest law firm by revenue in the world. So, Michael, would you mind please describing Soryn IP's general approach and work with university TTOs?
Hi, everyone. I'm a little different, I guess, than some of the, well, a lot of the folks up here, actually. So, not from Kentucky. Definitely not. Only person from New Jersey up here, as far as I can tell. So I actually was a lawyer in my old life. About 7 years ago, which is hard to believe I can say it was 7 years ago. I think I did enough work for founders and entrepreneurs that you, even as a lawyer, kind of get the bug, right? You just kind of wait for your opportunity because it's hard to know what that is if you're a lawyer. And at kind of the same time, an interesting thing happened in the patent world. I don't know, is everyone in here, usually like patent people, everyone kind of have familiarity with patents by raise of hands just to kind of know who's in the audience? Okay, great. So you probably all know this, but in 2011, 2012, Congress changed our laws quite a bit. We're probably all familiar with patent trolls. We've heard a lot about them. I'm sure the wisdom of software patents comes up quite a bit around campus here. But in the kind of 2009, 2010 time period, I think a lot of big companies, particularly some maybe software companies, were not happy with their legal bills, were not happy with the number of lawsuits they were facing by, quote unquote, patent trolls, particularly because at that time, if you were sued for patent infringement, one of your only options was, right, you pay all the way through or you settle. And people got tired of settling. And so Congress, in all their wisdom, passed what we know as the American Invents Act in kind of 2011, 2012, which maybe had great intentions, but I think if you're kind of live and die in the patent space, or at least had a feeling that, wow, this could maybe be not so great for a lot of innovators that rely on their IP to raise investment, to protect products, to do licensing, because these new reforms, I think if you sat down and really studied them, could have the potential and have proven to be really difficult for companies that have to rely on patents. Because Congress, I guess the best way to say it is, they couldn't surgically figure out how to just figure out who's a bad actor patent troll, right? Just a guy who bought a patent and goes and sues 30 companies from, say, a university who are now also called patent trolls in the same conversation. So they just kind of passed laws that made it across the board difficult to enforce patents, right? So that was kind of my aha moment. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the law and start a company working with these kinds of companies. And we actually started as an advisory firm working with actually a handful of pretty well-known universities on kind of how do you monetize IP, what kind of strategies do you adopt in this new patent world. But what we learned pretty quickly, I think, from the experience of some of the universities we're working for and some other innovators, is that the environment has changed, right? It's changed quite a bit. If you're an innovator these days, there is a good chance that just as a byproduct of doing business, you're going to have conversations with someone much larger than you that you're going to have to disclose delicate technical details to, either to integrate into their chain or kind of become compliant with their systems. And what our advisory clients were seeing was that more often than not, shockingly, that same entity who had signed NDAs, who had all their engineers together with our people's engineers, would just go launch a product that looked a hell of a lot like our technology, right? And so if you're the smaller company, you're saying to yourself, well, maybe they had this independently, but at the same time, they're giant person here, company A, and so why do they need to talk to us if they already had the technology? And an interesting thing happened, which is because the patent laws have changed, because it's probably much better to be a defendant or an infringer these days than someone who has to rely on their IP. Well, a lot of the same companies have stopped having business conversations, and they've kind of pushed everything to litigation, right? So you have Harvard, actually, a couple of years ago, even in town, sued Micron and someone else, I forget who, but who was it?
That was BU that sued.
No, Harvard did too. Harvard had a separate litigation, and they actually put on their website, like, are we a patent troll, right? We're not a patent troll. We had no choice but to file this litigation because that's how it is in the industry now. And as more and more litigation popped up, the other interesting dynamic was for a lot of universities and for a lot of companies, it's just too expensive, right? You can't afford it. It's really risky. It's not transparent. And it's patent litigation. They call it kind of the sport of kings, just because your average patent litigation could be a 5, 7, 10, $15 million if you're in some venues experience. And so from that sort of experience of seeing this happen to our clients, we actually cut the company in half and we raised a fund to start investing and financing these sort of patent endeavors of our clients. We've done a fair amount of work for universities. I believe we have 4 universities in our portfolio right now that are sort of actively litigating, and we finance that. But sort of beyond just financing litigation, what's interesting is when you have valuable IP, and you can usually find valuable IP if you look at a technology that's developed and you kind of go backwards in time, you'll find 3 or 4 really interesting companies that were doing really interesting things kind of as the first movers in that space. And when you can work with those companies, you can do a lot of interesting things. You can do equity investments in the business. You can bring in licensing teams and kind of pay their salaries. You can lend them money where they actually put up the IP as collateral. And so we've kind of just juggled all sides of the IP world, I guess, for the last 7 years now, which is hard to believe.
Do you think that universities in particular have been hard struck by all these changes to patent law? You mentioned the American Invents Act, damages laws changed, ALICE, subject matter eligibility has changed. Do you think that's affected universities specifically?
Well, I mean, it's more than that. I think the narrative has affected universities, right? In a sense, it's comical when someone talks about a lot of the universities we know as a patent troll. That's how you kind of know, like, wow, this is crazy. You guys are insane, right? The fact that you would call this university a patent troll. And I think universities are just as not immune to the same experiences as a lot of tech companies. And what's counterintuitive is if you would think if you're Harvard, right? You're Harvard, and you have, say, this patent portfolio in a certain semiconductor company, well, you're Harvard of all people should be able to call someone else and sort of work out a deal, right? But if you kind of just extrapolate on down, if Harvard's experience is I now have to litigate as just part of the business negotiation, then I think that unfortunately that is the experience of most of the universities now, at least in the sort of the technology side of the world.